I bought the lake property for one reason: peace. No neighbors blasting music. No golf carts buzzing past my porch. No meetings about grass height or mailbox colors. Just water, trees, and silence. The kind of silence you only notice once you've lived without it for a while. The land sat just outside a wealthy lakeside community called Silver Heron Estates. Big homes, bigger egos, and, unfortunately, one very aggressive HOA. My property had been there long before Silver Heron existed. It wasn't part of their development, wasn't under their HOA, and never had been. I had the deed, the surveys, and the county records to prove it. I figured that would be enough. I was wrong. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning. I was fixing a section of dock that had shifted after a storm when I heard heels clicking behind me, sharp, fast, angry. "You there?"
Excuse me.
I turned around slowly. Standing on my shoreline was a woman in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. Blonde hair pulled, so tight it looked painful. Designer sunglasses. A clipboard clutched to her chest like a weapon. She looked like every HOA nightmare rolled into one person. "Can I help you?" I asked calmly. "Yes, you can," she snapped. "I'm Linda Patterson, president of the Silver Heron Estates Homeowners Association. And you're violating HOA lake access rules." I blinked once. "I don't belong to your HOA." She scoffed, already writing something down. "Everyone on this lake belongs to the HOA." "No," I said, pointing behind me. "This parcel is independent. Always has been." She laughed. Not a friendly laugh. The kind that says you're about to regret existing. "Sir, you're using HOA-managed water, HOA-maintained shoreline standards, and an HOA-regulated dock. You will need to sign compliance forms immediately and pay back dues." I wiped my hands on a rag. "No, I won't." That's when her smile disappeared. "You don't get to say no," she said sharply. "I will fine you." "You can try," I replied. Her face flushed red. "This is private community property." "Then why does the county tax me for it?" I asked. She froze for half a second, then recovered. "I'm calling the police," she said, pulling out her phone. "You're trespassing and harassing an HOA official." I almost laughed. "Go ahead," I said. That was mistake number one. She paced dramatically while dialing, loudly explaining how a hostile man was refusing to comply with HOA regulations and illegally occupying lake access. I leaned against my dock post and waited. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up the gravel drive. 2 officers stepped out. Karen, sorry, Linda, marched toward them immediately. "He's right there," she said, pointing at me like I was a wild animal. "He refuses to follow HOA law." One officer looked confused. "Ma'am, HOA rules aren't criminal law." "He's trespassing," she snapped. The officer turned to me. "Sir, is this your property?" "Yes," I said. "I can show you the deed." Linda crossed her arms smugly. I reached into my jacket. Not for the deed yet. I pulled out my wallet and flipped it open. The badge caught the sunlight. Gold. Federal. Very real. Both officers went still. Linda's face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. What is that?" she whispered. I met her eyes calmly. "Ma'am," I said, "you just called the police on a federal officer standing on his own land." Silence hit the lake like a dropped stone. And that was only the beginning. The moment the badge flashed, everything shifted. The taller officer straightened his posture immediately. His partner's hand, which had been resting casually near his belt, dropped to his side. "Sir," the taller one said carefully, "may I ask what agency?" I closed the wallet but didn't put it away. "Federal. I'm off duty and on private property." That was all I needed to say. Linda, HOA President Linda Patterson, opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her confidence leaked out of her like air from a punctured tire. "Federal," she repeated weakly. That doesn't matter. This is an HOA issue." The shorter officer turned to her slowly. "Ma'am, if this is a civil dispute, you shouldn't have called 911. Her voice rose an octave. "He's intimidating me." He flashed a badge. I identified myself after you accused me of trespassing, I said calmly. On land I own. I handed the officer my deed and survey. He glanced at them, then nodded. Property checks out, he said. This parcel isn't part of Silver Heron Estates. Linda shook her head rapidly. That's impossible. Our HOA manages the entire lake. No, you don't, I replied. You manage access points your developers purchased, not the water, not my shoreline. Her lips trembled. You can't just build docks and refuse HOA authority. I can, I said. And I have. For years. The officers exchanged a look. The universal "this is not what we were called for" look. Ma'am, the taller officer said, there's no crime here. This is a civil matter at best. Linda's face twisted with frustration. So, you're just going to let him ignore the rules? There are no rules for him, the officer replied. Now, unless you're accusing him of an actual crime. He threatened me, she blurted. Both officers turned to me. I raised an eyebrow. I said, go ahead, when she said she'd call the police. Silence. The shorter officer exhaled. That's not a threat. Linda's hands clenched around her clipboard. This is harassment. He's harassing the HOA. The taller officer looked tired now. Ma'am, you approached him on his property. That's when Linda made mistake number 2. She pointed at me and snapped. I want him removed. The officer stared at her. Removed from his own land. Yes. The officer's tone hardened. Ma'am, you are dangerously close to filing a false report. Her eyes widened. I didn't. Calling police to enforce HOA rules is misuse of emergency services, he continued. And accusing a property owner of crimes without evidence doesn't help your case. I watched it sink in. For the first time, Linda looked scared. Well, she said quickly, this isn't over. The HOA has lawyers. I smiled faintly. So do I. The officers handed me my paperwork back. Sorry for the interruption, sir. One said quietly. If she returns, call us. Linda spun toward them. You're just letting him win. The shorter officer shook his head. No one's winning. But you're definitely losing. That's when she stormed off, heels slipping on the rocks, dignity completely gone. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong again. Because that afternoon I got an email. They fined me. Dokviolation. Unauthorized shoreline use. Non-member lake access. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. Because now, it wasn't just personal. Now it was documented harassment of a federal officer, abuse of authority, and a paper trail long enough to bury an HOA. And Linda had no idea what she'd just started. By the next morning, Silver Heron Estates had gone quiet. Too quiet. No more surprise visits. No angry emails overnight. No golf carts cruising past my gate by accident. For a brief moment, I almost thought someone over there had realized they'd messed up and decided to back off. That illusion lasted. That's when my phone buzzed. Another email. Subject, second notice, escalated enforcement. I opened it and actually had to admire the confidence. They'd added new violations. Unauthorized dock expansion, unapproved shoreline materials, failure to attend mandatory HOA, hearing obstruction of community lake access. I whistled softly. Bold strategy. What really caught my attention, though, was the attachment. A notice demanding I appear before the HOA board that Friday night, or face liens against my property. Yeah. On land they didn't own. On property they had no jurisdiction over. And signed at the bottom. Linda Patterson, HOA president. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the entire email chain to someone I trusted, a federal attorney who owed me a favor. Then I walked down to the county recorder's office and pulled every document related to my land, the lake, and Silver Heron's original development. By noon, I had a very clear picture. Silver Heron's developers had tried and failed to buy my land years ago. When I refused, they built around me and quietly hoped future boards would handle it. Linda wasn't just power-hungry. She was executing a long-standing HOA fantasy. That afternoon, I noticed movement near the lake. Two men in matching polos were measuring something near the waterline, my waterline. I stepped onto the dock. "Can I help you?" They jumped. One cleared his throat.
Hain spetin.
"Leave," I said. "We're authorized." "You're trespassing," I replied. "You have 30 seconds. They hesitated. So I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, "state your names and who sent you." They backed up immediately. "Linda," one muttered. "That name again." They left. I sent the video to my attorney. Friday came. Silver Heron Estates received something much worse than my presence. They received a cease and desist letter. 20 pages. Federal letterhead. Clear language. It stated, politely but firmly, that any further attempts to fine, inspect, lien, harass, or restrict my property would be considered targeted retaliation, abuse of authority, and civil rights interference. It also informed them that all communications were to go through counsel only. Linda received her copy personally. I know this because she emailed me 10 minutes later. Her tone had changed completely. "Let's resolve this calmly. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we can discuss shared lake usage amicably." I didn't reply, because while she was typing that email, I was discovering something much bigger. Something buried deep in HOA financial records, lake permits, and shoreline modifications. Silver Heron Estates didn't just harass me. They had been illegally restricting public access water rights for years. And the person who signed off on most of it, Linda Patterson, president. Suddenly, my problem wasn't an HOA. It was leverage, and I was about to use all of it. By Monday morning, Silver Heron Estates was buzzing. Not with golf carts or friendly lake walks, but with whispers. My attorney confirmed what I suspected. Once that cease and desist landed, the HOA's legal counsel immediately asked why a federal agency was involved at all. That question alone was enough to trigger internal panic. And panic makes people sloppy. I received an anonymous envelope that afternoon. No return address. Just documents. Bank statements. Meeting minutes. Emails. Someone inside the HOA had decided they didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. As I flipped through the pages, the picture became clear and ugly. Linda hadn't just overstepped with me. She'd authorized unpermitted shoreline modifications, private lake enforcement, measures that blocked lawful access, selective fines against homeowners who challenged her HOA funds used to pay a consultant, who just happened to be her brother-in-law, and the lake. Part of it was federally protected water, which meant some of what she'd approved wasn't just a civil issue. It was federal. That night, I made 2 calls. One to my attorney, one to my supervisor. I explained everything calmly. Provided documentation. Forwarded files. There was a pause on the line. Then my supervisor said, "We'll take it from here." By Wednesday, Linda was unraveling. I know because she showed up again. This time, she didn't bring a clipboard. She brought desperation. She stood at the edge of my driveway, arms folded tightly, scanning the property like it might attack her. "I just want to talk," she called out. I stayed on the porch. "Through lawyers." "This doesn't need to be a big deal," she said quickly. "HOAs make mistakes." "This stopped being a mistake when you called the police on me," I replied. Her voice cracked. "You don't understand what you're doing." I almost smiled. "Oh," I said, "I understand exactly." She stepped closer. "If you drop this, I can make things easier for you." That was mistake number 3. "Are you offering preferential treatment?" I asked. She froze. No, I meant, I'm recording," I said, holding up my phone. Her face went white. She backed away without another word and practically ran to her car. The next day, Silver Heron's HOA board held an emergency closed-door meeting. Linda didn't leave as president. She was suspended. By Friday, state regulators were asking questions. By Sunday, federal investigators were reviewing permits tied to the lake. And by Monday morning, I woke up to something I hadn't expected. A news van, parked outside Silver Heron Estates. The headline hadn't broken yet, but it was coming. And Linda had gone completely silent. which usually means one thing. Someone's lawyer finally told them the truth.